I'm Joe.
And I'm Jordan.
Hello.
Unusual.
This week, or for this podcast, we want to talk about what it means to be a warden. And it's not just a name someone gets to call themselves. It really is a state of mind. And we want to explain how a wardenship is earned and what it really means to warden. I think a lot of people have an idea that it just is a label for someone who embraces the ideals, but it's so more than that. What do you think it takes to become a warden, Jordan? What does it mean to you?
I said it was a state of mind. No, sorry, I said it was a state of being, and you said that sounded rather Buddhist.
Yeah.
It is true, though. It is a state of mind. I think it is. Anyway, it is constant self-improvement.
Okay, so for the sake of everyone listening, what kind of self-improvement examples could you give there?
Not relying on other people to do stuff for you is the greatest one, I think. Actually taking responsibility to do stuff yourself. It's one thing complaining about stuff, but then it's another matter altogether actually doing something about it.
Okay, so what kind of thing are you referring to there exactly? I mean, yeah, complaining's easy.
But yeah, a prime example of that is, well, maybe not prime example, a very, very minor example. People complaining about neighbours who leave their bins out and stuff like that. You know, get on friendly terms with your neighbour and then have a word with them after, rather than just give them the evil eye from across the road.
Or just, slightly passive-aggressive. But you could just give them a knock one day, say, oh no, you didn't bring your bin in, I thought maybe you were not feeling well or something, so I just put it away for you.
Well, that is a little bit aggressive, but yeah, I get your point.
Well, if you know them very well, you might get away with that. I just need to help out. Normally bring your bin, maybe something's up.
Yeah, that sort of thing, checking on your neighbours. Don't sit there and complain that nobody comes and talks to you. It's on your nan or your mum or whatever.
Exactly, and especially if it's something that doesn't always happen, use it as an excuse to give them a knock and say, I see that you've been out, is everything all right? Do you need help with anything? It's a really good way of living the warden life. We don't just keep assigning labels to ourselves, because that's essentially the mess we're in, where people can call themselves whatever they want, but they don't believe it in every case, and they don't live it in any cases. Being a warden is much more than just turning up on a stream and calling yourself a warden. It really is about having this community mentality.
A proactive mentality.
Yes. When you think about all of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis, how many of those things add value to your life or someone else's?
I'll sit there and watch Downton Abbey, various other bits and bobs, and then they get onto Twitter and send a mean tweet about their latest advert, their latest product not being very good, rather than doing anything about it.
Okay.
Trying to land.
What's your problem with Downton Abbey?
It was just a thing that I found, 'cause it was the only programme I could think of.
No, you'd be on guard duty sort of 24/7, but it is about making small changes.
I'm entirely used to this, the recording nonsense, and we got interrupted, and now we've lost our train of thought. Just spent about 5 minutes trying to record again, because she's too busy laughing at our ridiculous nature. No idea.
And incompetence.
Yeah, this is what I'm putting up with, Chad. Just insults. Insults which aren't even live.
Right, I know I know we were talking about being a warden and what it means.
Indeed.
I remember saying something and then I laughed and I can't remember what it was. But I suppose, all joking aside, it really comes down to, what does being a warden to you? Because it's just a coat that you can slip on, slip off. It really doesn't have any value. It has to mean you have to feel it. You have to live.
It has to be.
Yeah. And it can be learned, because being a warden is going to be the pinnacle of the community that we're building. And none of us born wardens. We've all had to work at it. We're all on varying stages of our journey. But when
you don't want to be born, I suppose you kind of do want to be born this way, but it's just not natural, because the point is to to improve both yourself and your family and your surroundings.
Well, yeah, of course, because if we were already all wardens, then we wouldn't.
Exactly.
So how does someone
people that are standouts, basically, and no one can be a standout. This is one of our issues when it the medal days at school sports. If everybody gets a medal, if everybody's a winner, nobody wins. It's the same with it. If everybody's a warden, effectively nobody is.
Well, it will cease to have value, right?
Exactly. Though it would be pretty good if we lived in a world where everybody lived up to general sort of principles.
Okay, so what is a warden then? It's certainly someone who holds our ideals of behaviour, of principles and values. It's someone who gives as much as they get from the community. It's someone who sets examples and inspires us. Who, while they may not seem like they're achieving much, are constantly striving to improve themselves. It's in tiny little ways that are not even noticeable. It's people who switch off the television and, I don't want to quote that famous kid show, but go and do something more productive instead. It's those people who's watching the news for their daily fix of misery.
What kid is that?
Why don't you? To certain do something less boring instead.
Okay, I've never heard of that. Fair enough.
But the point is, it really truly is a state of mind. It's a thought process. It's I'll turn up and I'll really be inspired by what you're saying, and then afterwards I'm going to go back and do it before. Not only is that essentially preventing this community from growing, but harming yourselves when you do this, because the only person who's hurting you is you, and the first person it should benefit is you. Being a part of a community does everyone involved. All things that people are currently concerned about, the issues with the vaccine, terrible lockdowns and the side effects of the lockdowns, fear of the police, look at the way the police are behaving, being left behind, fear of dismissal of the night, no one even knows that you've gone or notices that you've gone, fear of losing the few connections that you have with your local area or your family or your friends or your job, or all of the things that you have convinced give you meaning, and many of them do not, by the way. You are more than just your job. But we feel important for the process. The things that really do connect you to the ground that you walk on is your family and your community and the bonds you make. It's not just about how you treat people, it's about how you make them feel. Because
one thing coming back to is this idea of being proactive. It's not entirely the right word, but the not shirking responsibility and saying that somebody else can do it for you, not delaying doing something you know needs doing.
We've talked about this a lot, haven't we? That people are actually palming off responsibility for doing something. I think it's more than that. I think this is about shame. I look at the world that we live in, and I look at the things that have been done to us, and I'm just right now talking about the awful things that have been done to us that people have seemingly gone away with. There's in that there wasn't pushback, and you can, I suppose, justify to some degree that didn't know at the time. But many people did. If those people had had a community when this happened, the pushback would have been swift and it would have put an end to it. If all the mothers and the fathers had stood together and said no, having this happen to our children, it would have stopped. Because bullies will go after an easy target. They don't want any trouble. They just want to get what they want and then get on with it.
It's a perception of us being weak.
Right, but we are weak individually. Action of our weakness is the reason why people do the things they do to us.
Right.
Because they don't see any negative consequences of their actions. They don't see the punishment because they've really received one. We don't shame them. We don't push back. We don't stand together as a unified block of people and say, no, you want to get to our children, you have to come through us. We've never done those things. We've never said, keep your hand. We've never just said, no. No, these are our children. What do you think you're doing? We are here to protect our children from... You don't get to touch our children. Who behaves like that? The bullies. Everything that we are fighting against now is essentially this bullying. And it seems like we're always the victim. But we can't keep sitting there silently complaining about it and whining about it and saying, well, it's so unfair. Of course it's unfair. Life is unfair. But the things that are worth having are worth fighting for. When are we going to fight?
The problem isn't people sitting complaining. It's people just sitting there complaining online and then not doing anything.
But that's because they're alone. Because even though we come together in fits and starts, when push streams end and the videos end and people switch off their computer, they're back to being alone.
Yeah, even when meetings end. We all went down to the pub, for example. You know, everyone had a massive meet-up. 2,000 people turned up. Great. But at the end of the day, you go after that.
Well, that's a good analogy for the shopkeepers that assaulted by the police. Mm-hmm. They came together under a banner of, we're going to open our businesses because we think it's unlawful and unethical to force closed. And this one poor chap was punched by a police officer. And shame that police officer, his behaviour. That's all they did. Like, why didn't they form a barrier? Why didn't they link arms with him? Why didn't they do something?
Why didn't they push the cop away?
Were they bonded to this man? Did they care about his safety? Or was it a token gesture? Because they weren't really connected at all. He was a stranger, right?
That's the problem. All they were connected with was a very vague idea.
Of a shared goal, which was to open businesses, but they didn't care. There was no emotion involved. They were certainly shocked and affronted by that police officer's beer. They weren't willing to put themselves on the line to help that man because there was no benefit to them.
Exactly. If that was their brother-in-law, for example,
yes, they would have protected him.
Or better yet, if that was a well-known member of the community, knew that person, even if they had a familial link with him, they would have stopped for him. You know, that's Bob the flower guy, whatever the hell he did. I have no idea.
I've known Bob all my life. Bob is my friend. Bob comes to my home for... Bob knows my children. Yeah, exactly. These bonds that we forge now are going to prevent things like this happening in the future. Again,
because they're big bonds.
Well, we can't come together to these sort of false premises anymore, which is what we've been doing the last maybe 15 years. Coming together under this collectivized notion or that one. They're empty. They're just words. Nobody means it. I think that this shopkeeper...
Do mean it? Is it enough? I would say no. And the reason I would say no is because really very little things have changed. Even when you look at something enormous and very, very popular, such as the yellow vests, they didn't really change anything.
Well, I suppose...
Not to my knowledge, anyway. There hasn't been a massive rollback in state intervention in France.
They did get some police officers to stab them, but they were just other police officers.
Indeed.
I think for what we need to occur, we have to be example for others. If we all sit there now not feeling it, not meaning it, not feeling it, not really committing it, and we are an example that we set for others, if they follow our lead, they're also going to not mean it or feel it. And we're going to have a bunch of people who are somewhat loosely connected to an idea that they're not willing to fight for, that they're not willing to protect. What happens if someone comes for the idea and tries to shut it down? Does everyone just go scatter to the four winds? Nobody's invested in it. Nobody cares about it enough to take a stand for it. And if we don't stand for something right now, we don't have time for anything else. We literally things for so long. I think it's really hard to even recognise what the right things are. But the right thing about more than just the self, it's about all of us. We are strong together. And we are, I would say it's not even a perception of weakness. We are weak when we stand alone. We can be picked off alone. You stand alone, you are brought down alone. If you fight alone, you lose alone. We must come together, and we must really, really stand for each other. The point of community is its strength. Community is strength. Community gives us all protection.
I think another way of looking at it isn't just from that, because that appeals to one type of person. But the other aspect of this is, if you become the hub of your community, other people aren't really able to do much to you. Because if you take the shopkeeper and copper analogy, for example, if you were that shopkeeper and everybody loved you, the copper wouldn't have done what they did.
Well, that's a good point. That not only would they would never even tried, right?
Exactly. It's important to recognise both aspects. It's important to recognise you being there for other people is also a way of building that. It's great them being there for you, but the way that is you actually becoming valuable. You becoming incredibly important to these people.
Well, this is really what it comes down to. Do you add value to the people in your life? And do they add value to your life? For us to survive what's coming, we need a lot of people to add value. We need people to give than to take. And if everyone is giving, no one needs to take anything. And it's a wonderfully different approach to life that we haven't really engaged with for a long time. There are still people taking. There are still people who put themselves above everyone else. There are still people that claim they're doing something for the good of others, when actually all they're doing is helping themselves. We're not here to get in. We're talking about a future where we have respect, mutual respect, where people are recognised for their good works, their good deeds, not just their words, where people are trusted, where that trust spreads throughout the community because it embraces those kinds of behaviours, where people put aside this almost aggression that's been forced on us with blowing responsibility for fun, pleasure. But it's not real. Again, it's fleeting. It
means.
Yeah, it's
a really good example of this. Look at the incredible amount of effort 4chan put into this. And fine, some of them were very, very funny, and some of them have survived. But you think of the thousands and thousands of hours that went into all those things that they have there. How many of them did people just look at and then skip by completely? How many good ones do you remember? People put a full amount of time for something which is basically forgotten as soon as it's...
I want to go a step further and say, let's talk about Anonymous.
Is that...
No, it's a separate group. Anonymous basically brought down... They were hackers and they brought down paedophile rings and various things. Imagine what Anonymous could have done had they collectivised and really focused on the bigger picture and worked with things like the QAnons and worked with people like the Redditors, the 4chans, and what if all those groups had come together and really, really worked to prevent what's happening now? Of course, no, well, they didn't, because they got infiltrated. Because whenever someone has a truly good idea, a truly helpful way to improve things, somebody tears it down. And because no real solutions are right. Mm-hmm. But I believe that we do have a truly good solution, and I believe it's a real solution, and it's eminently achievable. But it requires good people to believe in it. It, not us. The solution, regardless of who is leading the charge. But everyone who in status could be one of those leaders. Just imagine the feeling of success and confidence and respect of being a community leader. Knowing that you've earned every single word of praise that you get. That you've earned every single thank you that you receive. Just that of... I did something really wonderful and lots of people are happier because of it. Imagine that you started your life, maybe got to your mid-30s and think, well, haven't really achieved anything. There aren't going to be a lot of people that miss me when I go. Well, why does that have to be your fate?
It's always change.
But what if your change saves lives and makes people happier and more prosperous?
Exactly. That's not.
You know, there's been talk in over the last few years about all these sort of Marvel movies, superhero movies, because of social justice. I know this is a bit of a trite cliche, but we can be our own heroes. Doing the right thing doesn't actually require any effort. In fact, we're working harder not to do the right thing than if we just let nature take its course. Being a decent person, doing something good, paying it forward. People respond to what they're given. And what's that famous quote I fell in love with this year? What you feed grows. If you focus on all of the good, you will attract like people who are also focused on the good things that you can do and on the good things they can do. If you go and keep getting your fix of misery and sitting in your little black-pilled basement, because everyone's got a little basement in their mind where they sit and dwell on things. I have one. I hold my hands up. But if you keep getting your fix of misery and then you come back into the light for the medicine and then you go and get another fix, what are you actually achieving?
You're doing nothing. All you're doing, if anything, is just hurting yourself more and more.
Of course you are. You're bringing yourself.
Every time you go back into the black pill zone, it's going to get a little bit deeper, and then when we come of that, the white pill is going to become a little bit less helpful.
Yes. The white pills will stop working.
It will stop working, and then what are you left with? You're just left with misery. This is why I really think the no news concept is going to work. I think it's going to do a lot of people a hell of a lot of good. It kind of covers on last night's show. Kind of, not really. It was a very strange show. Getting away from the news for a week made me realise just how incredibly useless it is. There really is no reason to be reading it day in, day out. Maybe once a week, take a look at it. Just get what's going on. Beyond that, if it's not important enough for a family member to tell you about it, affecting it, doesn't matter. Why are people getting so incredibly outraged about stuff that literally does not affect them?
Does it not affect them? But why focus on the things you can't change?
There's that as well.
That's actually frustrating yourself, and then no good will come of it.
The other point is something that you kind of tapped once before. The news is only there to direct you, one way or another. We all acknowledge that the news, the media, all of that, at the very least, is pretty damn biased. Why continue to go back to these people? It's fine. Well, I don't actually go to these mainstream sites myself. I just watch a YouTuber break down ridicule it.
But it's still
the general gist. You're still going back to the world. You're still going back to these things.
It's the equivalent of going to a lying shyster for advice. You know they're lying to you. Why do you listen to a word they say?
Exactly. It's completely silly. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't go along to somebody who is... you wouldn't go along to somebody who's been done for credit fraud and then say, hey, advise me on my mortgage. That wouldn't be a good idea. That'd be pretty bloody horrific.
The truth is that we're all our own worst enemies. That's been instilled in us. To find the most helpful thing that we can read with and indulge ourselves in it, it's incredibly harmful, and we stop. If you are your mainstream media and then you're going online in it anyway, you're just exchanging the source, but you're still misery.
Now, if anything, you're actually getting even worse, because the only things that people will make are the really outrageously depressing news articles.
That's true. I mean, we kind of floated the idea of good news stories, didn't we? Is there a single channel that focuses on that? It's not one I know of. And you can say that, people might say, oh, you're in a fantasy or something, the harsh realities of life. The harsh realities, what harsh realities? It is, if we watch television at all, onto the radio or read a newspaper or go online, we wouldn't even know that COVID existed. Lockdowns were occurring until we faced them in reality.
The other aspect of, I understand the harsh realities of life, but unless it is actually taking place within your community, does it really matter?
Exactly.
Like you do taking place in Leon actually have anything to do with somebody who's living in Inverness? No. then, what are you getting outraged about? It's nothing to do with you. It's nothing to do with you. It's nowhere near you. You may have a tacit interest in it, perfectly fine. Everyone does.
It's emotional masochism. You'll get outraged by things. If you're going to watch something that you are prepared to something about and you need information, fine. Don't sitting on your sofa and just stress over it. What did it do for you?
Exactly. You've either got to cut yourself out and accept that it's going on and then just briefly keep up to date with it, or you have to do something. And if doing something march, then go and march. That's perfectly fine. If doing something means setting up a shop that should be open and to support his business, perfectly fine. But there's many ways to do it. At this moment in time, we all know the economy is going down the toilet. It is just a matter of time.
Thing is,
it makes perfect sense then to actually act upon that news rather than continuously stream that it's going down the pan.
Yeah, and it comes back to this reactive personality, doesn't it? That we get so outraged by things we can't control, but it doesn't stop us reacting to them. That's not proactive. Proactive is saying, we know there's a problem, information I can about this problem, and we're going to organise some way of pushing back. Well, not happening, because that's what it's going to do. And we cannot seem to get people to lift out of this kind of misery fix to actually properly engage with a solution. And if we aren't looking for solutions, it's already over. If we're not working these, if you're going to fight for something, for goodness sake, fight for a solution. Surely. Otherwise, we're going to be in 10 years' time. Well, if only we'd done this and if only we'd done that. And the people who do fight for these solutions are going to get ahead and they're going to be fine. But for everyone else who didn't fight, who didn't invest, who didn't commit, you're in deep trouble. And we don't want to see anyone pay for the actions of a few people who will never be affected by what they're doing to others. We set up this community to everyone who is willing to invest in it, commit to it, and be a part of it. So the real question to ourselves is, why isn't you? We all have choices. Limited as they are right now, we still have choices. And our choice is simple. We either take what's being done to us or we start to push back against it. We can push back is by coming together and securing a little tiny portion of the world that we can create it to be, and then have that expand. I think that's a damn good start. It's certainly better than going for the end. We've talked before about no political solution. You're not just talking about getting into number 10. You're not just talking about fighting the politicians. The whole system is embedded within itself, from the police to the educators to the civil service to the politicians. If anyone at this point thinks the current government runs this country, then they truly are living a fantasy world.
If getting into these things actually did good,
they would have changed already.
Why hasn't BLM targeted the police? That in the first step, if actually becoming fixed it, surely the answer to Black Lives Matter is just all of you become police officers and then inside.
Well, if you're all police, you can't be oppressed by police, right?
No, there's that as well, but just the very basic thing, if actually infiltrating the thing that is apparently corrupt worked,
it would already be done.
Exactly, it would already be done, but the solution would simply be, go and work for it. Fix it from the inside.
Come it. Change it.
If you don't like how Amazon works, if you think they pay their staff too low of a wage, go get a job at Amazon, work your way up the ranks at Amazon, and then become the CEO of Amazon, then change it. Nobody will do that, because when you put it into that perspective, it becomes nobody genuinely thinks that will, so they don't bother. Yet people do still keep pushing the political solution rather than taking a genuine look at their own life, because it's so much easier. So much easier to say, well, I'll just support that person, they get into numbers, they get into the White House, or into this, that, and the other, than it is to actually sit there and say, right, I'm not happy with my life. What are the things that I can change it so that I can be happy with my life, but also I can start becoming more valued within my local community, and then start going from there.
This thing, if you want choices, you have to take control of your own future. If you do decide that you're going to support to take over the government, what if that person takes the reins? What if you don't like what they're doing? What if you're working for a company and someone gets promoted over and you don't like what they're doing? Then what? We can't keep waiting for other people to come along and do the things we wish they'd do. We just can't. We've done this. We've tried this. It doesn't work. Infiltration doesn't work. Trying to cut the head off the beast at getting into cool politics doesn't work. We've seen it time and time again. The very few out, whether they're genuine or it's all more performance. Look at the way they're treated by their peers. They do it. They're not going to turn anyone away from their goals, from their bad judgment. They're going to be shamed out of their own good judgment. You're going to lose people with filtration because there's just too much to fight back against. The reality
when
is,
you evil, eventually you become it yourself. Of
course you do, because it's all you hear day in, day out. Brainwashing works.
It's constant. It's all around you. It doesn't end. And he's fine saying, "Oh, I'm the exception. That'll never happen to me." He will be perfect. Maybe the exception. But do you trust somebody else to be that exception?
Why would you put your faith in someone else when all of the things that you achieve yourself could gain so much more, you yourself? You'd be able to make your own choices. I mean, speaking as an English woman, I want the choice and choice. That's it. I want freedom to defend myself from attack. I don't have that. I don't get to choose when I go or where or how. I can't choose how much I buy. I can't choose how much I pay. I can't choose whether or not I can decide which country my food comes from, for instance. I don't have any of the choices. I decide when I can go out for exercise anymore. I can't decide whether or not I want to suffocate myself. But if there are things I need and I have to wear a mask to get them, where is my choice to say no? You know, the law is very specific about what you cannot do. The police are not upholding the law. That's tyranny. It's dangerous. But that's where we are. We have allowed much to go on unchallenged. People want to talk about infiltration. Right under our noses, all of these departments and organisations were infiltrated. But no one challenged them when they did it. We didn't know they were doing it.
That's the other aspect as well, actually. If they did it because we weren't aware, because they've done it really well.
Well, they've probably put in place quite a bit now to prevent other infiltration occurring.
We use their tactics against them, rather.
If you faked your way to power and you did all those nasty things to get there, you would definitely the rest of your life protecting that power. You're not going to hand over and you're not going to let it go so easily. And I guarantee you there will be contingencies in place now to prevent anyone else doing what they've done because they've seen how successful it was, how easy it was with no challenge. Mm-hmm. There will be challenge for us to do the same thing. And the people talking about, change a country, people haven't even started with themselves. We've got to start with ourselves. So if it starts with yourselves and it ends with yourselves, the first step is to recognise the part that you... And that means we can't keep palming off responsibility for change on other people. This only works if everyone digs deep and contributes to it and commits to it. I don't want to sit here in 10 years' time and have people ask me why I didn't do anything. Why I didn't stop our enslavement, work against it.
Can you imagine something even worse? If your reply to that wasn't even didn't know, but because you reply with, I thought making memes would be the difference. I thought making funny pictures would save us.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's silly, obviously. The thing is, I understand for some people dealing with all this misery is humour. Mm-hmm. And everyone needs a break from it. I do get that. But when does the work begin? Because it is going to be work, and I don't put people off. But nothing worth having comes easy. If we're not to dig deep now, we need to make it happen. We never will. And if, again, things aren't going to remain static. If we sit here for years, wondering just how we can make someone else do what we want, it will be too late. The person who sits there telling you they're going to save you is lying. I'm afraid. One-person job. There's no way that's truthful. Sorry, go on.
This is why we've created some industry overviews, to empower people to actually take it upon themselves, to start changing their lives.
We know that people need choice. And the main choice is to get past this idea that money is everything. Money is simply a tool to buy the things you need. But that money could come in form. It's a tool. If you want true freedom, you need to disentangle yourself from the wage slavery. You need to be in control of it. It means you can be in control of where you live and how you live. It means being backed up and surrounded by family, otherwise known as your community. It means having a place where you can bring your family back together, raising your children in safety. Imagine walking into a community and you actually hear children running around and laughing. When's the last time anyone even heard something like that? We've got a generation of children being raised wearing masks, washing. We've got toddlers who think every little dispenser thing is a hand wash. This is how brainwashed. Toddlers. Babies who are a year old, a year and a half, going over to wash their hands because they're washed. People being told to wear 4 masks. 4 masks. Oof. 4 masks. Why not just put a carrier bag over your head and be done with it? This is ridiculous. These are the people that run our countries. They do not care about our health. They just don't care. But people tune in for their nightly fix of misery and brainwashing, and then they say everything will be fine because somebody else is going to fix it. They're not. Not without your help. The time has come where we have helping without helping. You help individuals, you are literally just helping that individual. And at what cost? Stop paying other people to promote themselves. Stop paying companies who hold employees in wage slavery, terrible working conditions, feeding the beast.
It's quite funny because I saw recently that, I don't even know when I saw this, that Amazon workers were trying to unionise. And then I read the statement from Amazon, and it was simply, we already provide you with education, and if you do unionise, it will also cost you about $500 a year.
Well, can't they unionise and regulate?
Exactly, that was their only thing. It was like, well, we're already helping you, and if you do this, you're going to lose money. All these people care about, that's all you ask of these people.
We're worker slaves. We're worker ants. That's all we are to these people. We're insects. Our lives don't matter. They don't care about our children. I mean, in the UK, the border's still open, but we're under stay-at-home orders. There is no solution that will be provided by at least the media or the government. And the sooner people start to accept that, the better. If you want to free and have choices, you will need to get off your side and make these. And the sad fact is, a lot of people have been convinced that because people are anti whatever's going on, that there's some side. There's a lot of people with their hand out, once again, taking advantage of the desperate people have for a solution. And it's truly sickening. The solution you can provide is the one that you provide yourself. And there it is, everyone. There it is. It's really important that everyone understands, without a community to have your back, no one is going to survive what's coming. No one. The best way to self-choice is to rethink how you look at everything. Stop getting that fix of misery on the white pills. Because as Jordan said, like any kind of addiction, those white pills will stop being enough. And then that's it, it's over. You'll stop trying, you'll become apathetic. You'll lose whatever morphed, and you will start to think that there's no point. And once people get to that stage, once enough people at that stage, the fight is already lost. We need good people to stand with us and really push back. We don't want anything from you except that you're willing to give. We don't want your money. We want you to invest money in us. We want you to invest your time in us. We want you to your freedom and children's freedom by committing to a really good idea that could secure freedom. So have a think about that, and we'll see you next time. Anything you want to add, Jordan?
Oh no, so I thought you were wrapping up.
I am. Bye for now.